Today we're diving into The Little Hours 2017, where three nuns' lives spiral into chaos when a young servant arrives, bringing secrets and mayhem. Let's begin. In medieval Italy, within the quiet walls of a convent, the lives of three nuns are about to change in unexpected ways. As the sun rises over Garfagnana, the rebellious Sister Fernanda emerges from the woods, leading the convent's donkey. Upon her return, the shy and gossipy Sister Ginevra immediately questions Fernanda's absence during morning prayers. Fernanda explains that the donkey had escaped the previous night, prompting her search through the woods. Then, her gaze shifts to Fernanda's attire, a black habit, which seems out of place for the season. Fernanda, visibly irritated, explains that it was dark when she left the night before, and she simply grabbed the nearest garment, not realizing it was black. Their conversation is interrupted by Lurkal, the gardener, who greets the nuns warmly. However, rather than returning his greeting, the nuns mutter insults. Later, Fernanda, Ginevra, and the other nuns participate in Mass led by Father Tommaso. After the service, Mother Maria confronts Fernanda about her absence from morning prayers. Once again, Fernanda explains that she had been searching for the runaway donkey. Mother Maria expresses her concerns, but Fernanda reassures her that it won't happen again. Meanwhile, Sister Alessandra, who comes from a wealthy family and stays in the convent due to her father's generous donations to the church, sits by a window, embroidering fabrics meant for sale. As she gazes at the picturesque mountain view, a deep sigh escapes her lips. She silently wishes for someone to rescue her from this life. While washing clothes, Ginevra and Fernanda discuss Alessandra's distant behavior. Fernanda believes that the embroiderer's cold demeanor is due to her father's rare visits. In the meantime, Ginevra can't help but gossip to Mother Maria about another sister secretly taking 2 portions of food. The abbess advises Ginevra to refrain from speaking about others' eating habits, reminding her that everyone has different dietary needs. At last, Alessandra receives a visit from her father, Ilario. She eagerly inquires about her mother and her intended suitor, whom she plans to marry. In response to Alessandra's request, her father, the merchant, expresses his concerns about the costly dowry. He reveals that he hasn't been able to fully pay it due to various ongoing expenses. Hearing this, Alessandra suggests that her father cut back on his church donations to save money. However, her father insists that reducing their contributions would damage their family's reputation. Though he understands her desire for marriage, he proposes that her true calling might be in her embroidery work, causing Alessandra to feel disheartened. She begins to doubt whether she'll ever achieve the life she longs for. To lift her spirits, her father offers encouraging words before bidding her farewell. After the communion, Alessandra walks alongside Ginevra and Fernanda, eager to share details of her father's visit. However, feeling frustrated, Alessandra lies and assures them that the meeting went smoothly. As they continue walking, they encounter the gardener, Lurkal. Irritated by his presence, the nuns lash out, hurling insults and even spitting on him. They accuse him of withholding their food. Meanwhile, Mother Maria and Father Tommaso are busy preparing the embroidered fabrics for sale in town. However, Lurkal interrupts them, informing Father Tommaso that he intends to resign because of the awful treatment he's received from the nuns. In Lunigiana, Lord Bruno enjoys a lavish meal with his wife, Francesca. As he animatedly recounts a story about the Guelphs, Francesca, uninterested, subtly flirts with their servant, Macedo, whom she's secretly seeing. That evening, Francesca spends the night with Macedo, lamenting her husband's repetitive storytelling. However, as they become intimate, Lord Bruno overhears them and abruptly enters the room. Macedo quickly jumps out of the window and back to his bed, feigning sleep. Lord Bruno visits Macedo's quarters and trims the hair of the man he suspects is involved with his wife. After the elderly nobleman leaves, Macedo cleverly clips the hair of his fellow companions, confusing Lord Bruno. After breakfast, Francesca sees Macedo walking through the yard, and the two share a passionate encounter. When Lord Bruno witnesses their sinful act from a distance, he immediately orders his guards to chase after the laborer. To evade capture, Macedo dashes through the woods and reaches a river, where he encounters an intoxicated Father Tommaso, struggling to retrieve the wet fabrics. The priest explains that his cart had toppled on his way to town, spilling the materials into the water. Learning of the mishap with the cart, Macedo lends a hand, helping Father Tommaso repair the damage. In gratitude for his assistance, the priest offers the homeless servant shelter in the convent's tool shed for the night. After dinner, Macedo confesses to Father Tommaso that he has committed both adultery and sodomy. Filled with remorse, he vows to mend his ways, but also reveals that if his master catches him, he will kill him. In response, Father Tommaso absolves him of his sins. To help Macedo evade his pursuers, Father Tommaso devises a plan to employ him as the convent's new gardener. However, there's one condition. Macedo must pretend to be deaf and mute to avoid potential conflicts with the nuns. The following day, the priest introduces Macedo to Mother Maria as the new helper. After acknowledging his arrival, the abbess inquires about the sales of the embroidered fabrics. Father Tommaso fabricates a story, claiming that a bandit gang had stolen the goods, explaining the lack of sales. As Macedo begins his duties as the gardener, Sister Ginevra curiously approaches him. He only responds with smiles and gestures, adhering to his role as a deaf-mute. Later, both Alessandra and Fernanda notice the newcomer. When he smiles at Alessandra, the rebellious Fernanda misinterprets the gesture, thinking he's an intruder, and brandishes an axe, threatening to strike. When Mother Maria arrives at the scene, she explains Macedo's situation, hoping to convince Fernanda to give him a chance. Instead, Fernanda angrily shouts in the man's ear, remaining defiant. Afterward, the abbess informs Alessandra about the stolen embroidery. Mother Maria suggests that an additional nun will join them to help double their production. However, the disappointed Alessandra sighs when she discovers that the new embroiderer is an older woman. To make matters worse, her embroidery frame breaks, adding to her frustration. Meanwhile, Macedo returns to the tool shed, and Sister Ginevra, curious about him, discreetly watches from a distance. To her surprise, she sees Alessandra enter the gardener's quarters. Inside, Alessandra requests Macedo's help to repair her broken frame. As he restores it, the nun openly vents her frustration about the embroidery work and her yearning to escape the convent. However, Macedo, still pretending to be deaf and hard of hearing, remains silent and focused on his task, offering no response to her candid words. After Mass, Sister Ginevra confesses to Father Tommaso her selfish act of not sharing a turnip with the other sisters. She also admits to having impure thoughts, though she assures him that she has not acted on them. During Sister Fernanda's confession, she reveals that she found a turnip and did not share it with the others. When Father Tommaso notices the similarity between the two confessions, he wonders if Sister Ginevra overheard Fernanda's. However, Fernanda denies this. The priest then brings up Fernanda's absence from morning prayer the previous day. She defends herself, explaining that she was searching for the donkey and that Father Tommaso should be grateful for her kindness. That evening, Father Tommaso congratulates Macedo on completing his first day of work. They celebrate by sharing sacramental wine, and for the first time, the gardener drops his act of being deaf-mute. Macedo mentions encountering 3 intriguing nuns, prompting Father Tommaso to caution him. Meanwhile, Fernanda's childhood friend, Marta. Together, they proceed to Alessandra's room, where they all partake in sacramental wine. Intrigued by the noise, Ginevra knocks on the door. Alessandra pulls her inside, and under her influence, Ginevra hesitates, but eventually drinks the holy liquor. Marta opens up about the joys of intimacy with men. In response, Fernanda expresses reluctance to engage in such practices. As Alessandra drifts to sleep, the sadistic Fernanda carries the inebriated Ginevra to her room, where they engage in an intimate encounter. The following day, Alessandra approaches Macedo, presenting him with a handkerchief as a token of gratitude for his help the previous day. Removes her veil due to the heat and gazes flirtatiously at the gardener. They share a kiss, which he reciprocates. Alessandra quickly stands up, apologizes, and leaves. During Mass, Fernanda observes that Alessandra's fingernails are dirty. Later, while she and Ginevra wash garments, the gossiper brings up their romantic night together, but Fernanda avoids the topic. Suddenly, the spoiled embroiderer joins them, explaining that her headpiece has become dirty. This initiative catches the two nuns by surprise, as they know that Alessandra is not skilled in household chores. When Fernanda asks how her headpiece got soiled, the needleworker fabricates a story, claiming that she assisted the gardener in digging a ditch. Shortly after, Ginevra attempts to instruct Alessandra on how to wash her veil. The embroiderer becomes overwhelmed by the task and withdraws, simply requesting that Ginevra perform the chore. After Alessandra leaves, the sadistic Fernanda unexpectedly tosses her garment to Ginevra and excuses herself, claiming she needs to clean the cellar. Once the laundry is finished, Ginevra heads to the basement but finds it empty. In her search, she stumbles upon a strange scene in the woods. Fernanda and Marta are together, and the woman is crafting a potion from the belladonna plant, dropping it on Fernanda's eye. She then asks the nun to slice her finger with a dagger so she can use the blood to color her cheeks. Following this bizarre ritual, they head to the tool shed for a private moment with Macedo. Afterward, Marta and Fernanda suddenly leave, leaving the gardener alone. As they head outside, they encounter Ginevra, who confronts them about their strange actions. Annoyed, Fernanda brushes her off and walks away, leaving Ginevra and Marta behind. The gossiper inquires whether their intimate moment was significant for Fernanda, and the strange nun casually responds that they were both intoxicated. That evening, a vengeful Ginevra lies in bed, contemplating a plan for revenge. Meanwhile, Father Tommaso inquires about Macedo's second day of work, and the gardener expresses his intention to stay for a while. The following day, priest welcomed Bishop Bartolomea to the convent. Meanwhile, Macedo sneaks into the embroidery room for an intimate encounter with Alessandra. Their moment is abruptly interrupted by the arrival of the abbess and the bishop, causing the gardener to accidentally speak and hide under the bed. Once they leave, Macedo rolls out and swiftly escapes through the window. Meanwhile, Ginevra interrupts Mother Maria and Father Tommaso's meeting with the bishop. When the abbess takes her to a private area, the nun openly reveals that Fernanda had lied about the donkey escaping, pointing out that the gates and walls are impassable. She then requests to take charge of caring for the animal instead of the defiant woman. A moment later, Ginevra heads to the cellar, where she also creates a potion using the belladonna plant. She cuts her palm and uses her blood as a cheek blush. At the same time, Alessandra confronts Macedo in the tool shed, questioning his supposed inability to speak. At first, the servant continues pretending to be deaf-mute, but eventually, he reveals the truth when the nun threatens to expose his secret. Before the gardener can explain, Ginevra suddenly appears, causing Alessandra to conceal herself in the hay while Macedo pretends to be asleep. Under the hallucinogenic effects of the belladonna, Ginevra impulsively kisses the sleeping Macedo, but stops when she realizes her attraction to women. She begins to overshare, even revealing that she is of Jewish descent, inadvertently disclosing this fact to Alessandra, who overhears her. Shortly after, Ginevra hears someone approaching and quickly hides in the hay, where she is surprised to find Alessandra. Just then, Fernanda, dressed entirely in black, enters the tool shed. She binds the gardener's hands and blindfolds him before leading him into the woods. Seeing this, Alessandra and Ginevra decide to follow them discreetly. As the sun sets, they discover that Fernanda has brought the servant to a witch's fertility ritual, intending to sacrifice him. Still under the influence of the belladonna, Ginevra impulsively steps forward, disrobes, and joins the dancing women around the bonfire. Hoping for mercy, a bound Macedo abandons his deaf-mute act and vocalizes his plea to be set free. However, believing they have cured him, Marta and Fernanda muffle his mouth with a cloth and proceed with the ritual. Ginevra lets out a piercing scream, drawing the attention of the other witches. Hearing this, Marta hurries to the bonfire and attempts to calm the frightened nun, leaving Fernanda alone with the servant. In an attempt to intervene, Alessandra rushes to Fernanda and tries to stop her from harming Macedo, prompting the gardener to explain himself. Before he can finish, however, Ginevra strikes Marta with a stone, knocking her unconscious. The gossiper steals Marta's clothing and the donkey, prompting the two nuns to give chase. Upon their return to the convent, Ginevra bangs on every door, loudly proclaiming that Fernanda is a witch. As the bishop attempts to console her, the accused nun arrives. Fernanda vehemently denies all accusations, sparking a chaotic and heated argument among the three sisters. Ginevra discloses that Alessandra had a romantic involvement with the laborer. Alessandra counters by revealing that the gossiper also had a romantic encounter with the servant, used a hallucinogenic substance, danced with the witches while unclothed, and disclosed her Jewish heritage. Upon hearing this, Bishop Bartolomeo seizes the sinful nun and urgently knocks on Mother Maria's door. But what they discover is even more troubling: an abyss with pants on the head of the abbess, adding an eerie layer to the mounting chaos in the convent. The gardener abandons his deaf-mute act and takes responsibility for everything, shocking Bishop Bartolomeo. Father Tommaso exits the superior nun's door, exposing his romantic relationship with her. The following day, the bishop initiates a tribunal. As punishment for Ginevra, the bishop sentences her to a 1-year fasting penance. When it's Alessandra's turn, the bishop expresses profound disappointment in her actions. In response, the embroiderer pleads with him not to inform her father about her transgressions. Next, the high-ranking clergyman reads Fernanda's sins, but the rebellious nun displays no remorse, simply rolling her eyes in response. When it is Mother Maria's turn, the abbess offers a sincere apology for her sin of fornication, but she also casts a flirtatious glance and smiles at the priest. Following this, Bishop Bartolomeo disqualifies Tommaso from the priesthood. Meanwhile, the pursuers capture Masetto and return him to the castle, where he will face the consequences of his involvement with Francesca. He is imprisoned in a jail cell awaiting his fate. Inside the convent, an elderly priest leads the mass. Afterward, outside the convent, the three nuns sit in a meadow. Ginevra suddenly apologizes to Alessandra and Fernanda for her earlier revelations. In response, the rebellious nun apologizes for not disclosing her true identity. Following this, the gossiper ponders the fate of Masetto, leading the trio to devise a plan to rescue him. That night, the three nuns arrive at the castle and use a turtle with a candle to create a distraction, allowing them to unlock the cell and help the servant escape. They dress him up like one of the nuns and leave an embroidered doll in his place as a substitute in the confinement. Afterward, the nuns and the gardener escape through the woods. Meanwhile, Mother Maria runs with a donkey and secretly reunites with Tommaso on the bridge, who had fled the monastery. When they hear someone approaching, the couple hides but leaves the donkey behind. Fernanda looks at the animal with confusion, but Ginevra urges her to move along so they can continue their journey. The abbess and the former priest arise and passionately kiss each other before fleeing the area, leaving their past lives behind in the wake of their escape. Thank you all for watching.